Welcome to the Blue Moon Channel, where mysteries come alive and every story hides a secret waiting to be uncovered. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a mysterious story that will keep you guessing until the very end. So sit back, relax, and step into the unknown with me. And before we begin, if you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. It truly means a lot to me. My name is Roland Cole. I'm 38. I spent most of my life believing every mystery has a human explanation. That's what being a detective does to you. You stop believing in monsters. Because real evil is usually painfully ordinary. A jealous husband, a lonely man, someone angry enough to hurt another person. After 13 years working homicide in Phoenix, I thought I understood exactly how the world worked. Until I went to Red Mesa. I was assigned to investigate a series of unexplained disappearances on Route 66 in Red Mesa and the surrounding desert area. Officially, they thought it might be a serial killer. Always during certain months, always under a blue moon, and always around the same isolated stretch of desert near Red Mesa. The Bureau's behavioral analysts believed the killer knew the terrain well enough to hide bodies where nobody would ever find them. A drifter, maybe. Or somebody local. Someone patient enough to wait years between killings. Unofficially, the locals believe there is some kind of supernatural force, something evil. Some believe the place was cursed. The drive into town took almost 5 hours through the empty Arizona desert. Old Route 66 stretched endlessly beneath my tires like a dying vein cutting through the wasteland. Dust blew across the highway in pale waves. Telephone poles leaned crooked in the distance. Every few miles, I passed abandoned gas stations and rusted motel signs buzzing weakly against the darkening sky. The further I drove, the more isolated everything felt, like the world itself was thinning out. The sun was already dying behind the desert mountains, turning the whole highway red, like fresh blood under the evening sky, and I was exhausted when I arrived at the Red Mesa. The town looked dead, not abandoned, just quiet. Too quiet. Most places have noise, movement, dogs barking, cars moving, people talking. Black Mesa had wind. That was mostly it. Wind pushing dust through empty streets, rattling old signs, humming through power lines. I was driving through the empty streets looking for the sheriff's office, and there it was. A faded sign, dark windows, and yellow papers blowing in the wind, hanging off the bulletin board beside the entrance. I went out of my dark blue SUV, now looking more gray and even more old from the desert sand. I looked around. Then I saw a sheriff's truck. Leaning against it was Deputy Daniel Reyes. The kid looked barely old enough to buy a beer. Clean uniform, nervous smile. "You, Detective Cole." "That obvious?" He laughed awkwardly and shook my hand. "Sheriff's sick. Guess I'm helping you." I could tell right away he was inexperienced. But he was local, and out there in the desert, locals knew things maps didn't. Daniel drove me through town while the last daylight disappeared behind the rocks. Native American families lived on one side of town. The rest was old ranch homes, trailers, and buildings slowly being eaten alive by the desert. Half the buildings looked abandoned. The other half looked like they were trying to be. "There's an inn up ahead," Daniel said. "Only place still renting rooms." The inn looked older than Route 66 itself. The room at the inn looked like it had been frozen somewhere around 1962. A slow ceiling fan turned above my head with a soft clicking sound every few seconds. The wallpaper had faded from years of desert heat, its old flower patterns almost disappearing into yellowed walls. The bed was narrow but neatly made, covered with a heavy brown blanket that smelled faintly of soap and dry dust. The wooden nightstand beside it had cigarette burns older than I was. I dumped my bags inside and walked over to the only place in town still serving food. Part diner, part convenience store, part bar. Locals sat quietly beneath slow ceiling fans. Nobody talked much. Most of them kept glancing out the windows toward the desert. No one paid attention to me. I grabbed some food, paid, and went out. There, I noticed an old Native American man sitting alone on a wooden bench. His face looked carved from leather after a lifetime beneath the desert sun. Deep wrinkles, clear gray eyes. He stared at me. Then he smiled. Not a single tooth left in his mouth. "They are coming for revenge," he said. I stopped. For what? The old man looked out toward the dark desert beyond town. For what was stolen. Then he laughed softly to himself. I shook my head and walked away. Once, back in the room, I opened the files and started reading. 12 missing persons over 5 years. The disappearances happened only during a blue moon. Not when the moon was literally blue, but during the rare event when a second full moon appeared within the same calendar month. And tomorrow night was the next one. I flipped through the witness reports. Again and again, survivors described the same thing. Strange desert winds, sudden temperature drops, blue mist appearing with the sandstorm, and strange screaming in the wind. The missing people had nothing in common. Different ages, different backgrounds. Tourists, truckers, families, solo travelers. They simply vanished. No bodies were ever found. One report caught my attention. The wind sounded like people screaming in another language. I closed the file and switched off the light. The next morning, I met Deputy Daniel Reyes outside the sheriff's station. He looked more awake than I felt. "You sleep okay?" he asked. "Not really." He laughed. "Yeah, nobody does around blue moon time." I looked at him. "You actually believe these stories?" His smile faded a little. "I grew up here, detective. You hear enough things." He opened the passenger door of the truck. "Come on, I'll show you where the last couple disappeared." We drove west out of town toward a stretch of desert locals called Dead Man's Basin. According to the reports, 4 people vanished there over the last 2 years. The desert looked endless. Flat, dry earth, scattered rock formations. Dead trees twisted by years of heat and wind. Exactly the kind of place where people got lost and died naturally. That's what I kept telling myself. Daniel parked near an old abandoned mining road. We walked around the area for hours. No footprints, no strange markings, nothing unusual, nothing supernatural. The heat became unbearable by noon. Waves of hot air rose from the sand, making the horizon ripple like water. Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead. "Most disappearances happen after sunset," he said, "especially when the wind starts." I looked around the empty desert. "You ever actually seen anything?" He hesitated too long before answering. "When I was a kid," he finally said quietly, "my grandfather used to tell me never to follow voices out here." I waited for him to continue. "He said the desert remembers things." I almost laughed, but something about the way he said it stopped me. Not fear, experience. Like he believed it because somebody before him had. We headed back to Red Mesa in the afternoon and agreed to return after dark. The blue moon rose early that evening. Huge, bright enough to cast shadows across the desert. I remember standing outside the inn, staring at it while the wind slowly picked up. The old Native American man was sitting on the same bench outside the store again, watching me. As Daniel pulled up in the sheriff's truck, the old man suddenly spoke without looking at either of us. "The dead travel tonight." Daniel's expression changed immediately. "You know him?" I asked after we drove off. Daniel nodded slowly. "Everybody knows old Joe." "What's his deal?" "He's Apache. His family's been here longer than the town itself." Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "He says something lives in the desert." I lit a cigarette. "And you believe him?" Daniel didn't answer. That bothered me more than if he had said yes. By the time we reached Dead Man's Basin again, the wind had grown stronger. Sand moved across the ground in long, shifting waves. The air felt colder now, unnaturally cold. We left the truck and started walking toward the rock formations, where the last victims had vanished. The blue moon illuminated everything silver. For a while, nothing happened. Then the wind changed. It came suddenly, violently, like somebody had opened a door inside the sky. Sand exploded around us. Within seconds, visibility dropped almost to nothing. "We should head back," Daniel shouted. I nodded, but the truck had disappeared behind the storm. The desert around us became pure chaos. Wind screaming, sand blasting against my face hard enough to hurt. I pulled my jacket over my mouth. Then I saw it. Blue mist, far out in the storm, moving toward us, fast, too fast. At first I thought it was just moonlight hitting the sand. Then I realized the mist was moving against the wind. Real fear. "Run!" I yelled. We turned back blindly toward where we thought the truck was. The mist rushed toward us across the desert, and inside it, I saw shapes, human shapes, tall shadows moving through the blue fog, dozens of them. Daniel was right behind me. Then suddenly he stopped. I turned and saw him standing there in the storm, frozen. He pulled out his revolver. The blue mist was only yards away from him now. "Daniel!" I screamed. "Hurry!" But my voice disappeared into the wind. The shadow figures moved closer around him. I could barely see their outlines through the storm. The sand hit my face like thousands of icy needles. My eyes burned. I stumbled and fell hard against the ground. I covered my face with my arms as the storm roared around me. Then I heard a scream. Long, wild. Then everything stopped. Just stopped. The wind, the sand, the screaming. Silence crashed over the desert so suddenly it hurt my ears. I slowly lifted my head. The storm was gone. The blue moon hung above the desert, bright and cold. Everything looked peaceful again. I searched for hours, screaming his name until my throat went raw, climbing dunes, checking every rock formation. Nothing. It was like Deputy Daniel Reyes had been erased from existence. I finally made it back to Red Mesa just before dawn. The sheriff called search and rescue immediately. Within 2 hours, the desert was full of people. ATVs, helicopters, cadaver dogs, volunteers. They searched every inch of Dead Man's Basin. Nothing. The dogs couldn't even catch a scent. No footprints. No signs of struggle. No evidence Daniel had ever been there at all. The search lasted 3 days. Then officially, they called it off. Missing. Presumed dead. That was the phrase they used. I remember sitting alone outside the inn that last night, feeling hollow inside, like something had been drained out of me. I'd lost people before. Comes with the job. But this felt different, because there was no explanation, no body, no evidence, just questions. And deep down, I think I knew I'd survived only because whatever was out there had chosen Daniel instead of me. The next morning, I packed my things and left Red Mesa. As I drove through town, I saw old Joe sitting outside the store again. Same bench, same stillness. He was watching me. I slowed the car. He looked me directly in the eyes. Then he smiled with his toothless mouth. I stopped the car completely and rolled down the window. "What are they?" I asked him. Old Joe stared out toward the desert. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, "This was once our holy land. until it was taken from us. They are the ones buried beneath the sand. I felt cold all over. Buried by who? Your people. Then he smiled again, not kindly, knowingly. I pulled up the window and drove off. Hit the road, not looking back, with more questions than answers.